Okay, this is just quickly want to show the workflow for bringing an STL model into BobArt and then doing some modifications to it once it's been imported. First thing I want to do is just go into BobArt and we'll set up our stock. In this case, the model I've got in mind I can put pretty easily on an 8x5, I think, background. And we'll go to something besides that color because I don't like that. Alright, so there's our stock, 8x5. And we'll now go to Emboss from Component, which is, in BobArt terminology, that's an STL file. You'll see that the selection window that comes up defaults to STLs. And this was the model that I had in mind. So you get a window that basically allows you to do a little bit of positioning and, should you wish to, some stretching and manipulation of the file. But assuming that you just want to keep it simple, using these little boxes down here, you can input values to move the piece around and center it up in your stock, or to, if you're doing an additive piece. Did a video a while back of a heraldic shield that had like 4 or 5 components in it. Allows you to position and rotate and manipulate the various models that will make up a larger piece. That's one of the reasons this is called a component. So once you've got it in place and you like where it's at. Oh, also one thing that you want to bear in mind is that you also have a Z component that you can play with. And what this does is basically raises or lowers the model out of the BobArt stock, such that if you only want to catch the top parts of the thing, you can lower it down and only the top part will be embossed, as you see. In this case, though, I want the whole thing, so I'm just going to give it a 0 value. For rotation, you simply rotate around the axes that you want. This is a standard little 2.5D relief, but you can put a fully 3D model in here and rotate it around to whatever size or side that you'd like. You don't have to keep the same aspect ratio. You can, for instance, turn this off and say I want this to be only 2 inches tall. And you see that it squishes down. Keeping my aspect ratio, though, you'll want to just leave these values the same. You might want to modify the Z depth or any of various modifications you'd want to do. There's some mirroring stuff in here. And you also have the type of emboss that you want to do. The most basic being just the additive emboss. Once you've got it positioned the way you want it, rotated, etc., and you can change the color. I'll change this to a nice red. Well, actually, I don't like to use red because that's the highlight color. We'll make it a yellow rose, even though I'm not from Texas. Alright, I've got that set up to my satisfaction. Click OK, and nothing happens. Well, one thing did happen. A couple of red X's came up here. That's because in BobArt, anything you do practically, not everything, but like 90% of things, requires you to recompile the file with the changes you just made. And you do that by going to Emboss Model, right-clicking, and then clicking on Regenerate. So there we go. We've now got an embossment of this file, the STL file. It is not the STL itself. It's basically a derivation of the STL. It's in a mesh format that is internal to Bobcat and proprietary to Bobcat. You can make modifications to this one, which is the beauty of the whole thing. There's only some limited amounts of things that you can do in Bobcat or BobArt to an STL file directly. But using this import function, you can do considerable manipulation to it. So in a question that just came up, that was how to apply a smoothing pass. And hard to tell from the question, but more than likely it was trying to be applied directly to an STL or something along those lines. In this case, you want to apply a smoothing pass to it, so you go up to Emboss Model, come down to Smoothing, and it just gives you, a a name for the component, which you can always change those. The window size, which is basically, you can think of it as how many pixels per, how much the average size of the smoothing area. And manipulating this, a larger value gives more smoothing, a lower value gives less smoothing. And you've got a checkbox for smooth whole model. In this case, because this is already a fairly smooth model, I'm going to up this to make it more dramatic. And we'll say with a whole smooth, say OK. And again, nothing happens. You get the X up here until you recompile it. Say regenerate, and hard to tell probably in the video, but that just softened the whole model. You can edit or delete this, and in case of this one I want to make it even stronger to make it more obvious, so I want to change that value from 0.1 to say 0.2, which will be pretty strong. Click OK, and again you don't get anything until you regenerate, or recompile is what I call it, just because I'm used to compiling Linux cores or kernels. And again, I think it's probably difficult to tell, well maybe not, that this has been smoothed out some. There's many other things you can do in here. You can put a texture over the whole thing. You can add geometry and blank out certain parts. There's just lots and lots of stuff to do, but I wanted to concentrate this, keep it short, and just basically talk about the workflow for bringing an STL in. And once you've got it as a BobArt image, then you can go and do many things with it. So I hope you found that helpful. Thanks very much.